I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Hello. I trust that you're maintaining your sanity by staying safe and sane and respecting each other's physical distancing, wearing masks when we're encountering others, and taking good advantage of sheltering in place in a mindful way. So welcome to this week's BCSF, Buddhist Church of San Francisco, virtual Sangha service. And this being the second weekend, we are observing our August monthly memorial or Shotsuki. But being that this is on the weekend between August 6th and August 9th, we are joining others in commemorating the 75th anniversary of the tragedy, the bombs that fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki 75 years ago. So for today's service, it'll begin with the reading of the August Shotsuki list by President Keith Kojimoto, and then the usual ceremony includes the chanting of the Sambujo, the 3 respectful callings, a statement of today's service, and then the chanting of Junirai, the 12 adorations, praising Amida. And for today, we are honored to present a memorial message. Our honorary minister assistant, Jack Dairiki, who is, as known in Japanese, a hibakusha, a survivor of the atom bombs. His circumstance was he and his family were in Hiroshima when the bomb dropped. And miraculously, I guess we'll say, he managed to survive. But those indelible memories of that traumatic experience have stayed with him these past 75 years. And he's managed to live a very healthy and fruitful life where he worked as an architect and then stayed very physically active in various ways, but also spiritually involved as a Dharma school teacher, and as we recognized him now, an honorary minister assistant for our Buddhist Church of San Francisco Sangha. So he'll be sent, as we've asked him for the last several years, to share his thoughts upon this occasion. So that will be the main message for today, followed by Minister Assistant Leo Joslin, whose mother was able to escape from Nagasaki, where she and her family were living, just before the bomb dropped. But tragically, the rest of her family that were in Nagasaki City all perished. So this time of the year has special significance for Leo Sensei. And so that will be the program for today. And we'll conclude with a special musical remembrance shared by the Ohana Arts based in Honolulu, where their young people are sharing the theme song of a wonderful production that they presented around the country and hopefully someday they wish to go to present it in Hiroshima. The title of their presentation is Peace on Your Wings. So that will be our memorial remembrance for this week's Sangha service. Thank you for your attention. Stay safe.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending the August monthly Shotsuki service. Thank you very much for attending the August Shotsuki service. Please join me in Kansho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namanda, 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 namanda. We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Amida Tathagata entering this Dharma hall as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Ojo Shaka Nyorai Nildojo Sangeraku. We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Shaka Tathagata entering this Dharma hall as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Ojo Jippo Nyorai Nildojo Sangeraku. We respectfully acknowledge the presence of Tathagatas of the Universal 10 Directions entering this Dharma hall as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome.本日ここにサンフランシスコ仏教会世襲となり、うやうやしく三仏憲政の昇覧を仰ぎ、慎みて8月の小月法要並びに広島と長崎の75周記念追悼の法要言宗数、如来エコの真実心をもって、法恩の誠いたし、仏徳を賛嘆し祀る、声願わくば、如来の大慈大悲心をもって、無料の功徳、一切至上の上に、エコした回らんことを、Today, on the occasion of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco's August monthly memorial and a special 75th anniversary commemorative memorial of the tragedies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We gather together reverently in the spirit of universal wisdom and compassion, Amida Buddha, in memory of those who have gone before us. With deepest reverence and gratitude for the all-inclusive wisdom and compassion that is Amida Buddha, we, through this virtual means, reaffirm the three treasures. Namu Kie Butsu, we take refuge in the Buddha, the timeless life of wisdom and compassion, which is the source of awakening. Namu Kie O, we take refuge in the Dharma, the universal truth of impermanence and interdependence, the illuminating light that is the Buddha's wisdom. Namu Kie So, we take refuge in the Sangha, the community of people dedicated to living harmoniously in the universal truth, a life manifesting Buddha's compassion. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandam, 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 Namandam. Junirai, the 12 adorations praising Amida Tathagata. Keishu Tenin Shokugyo Amida Sendyo Zokuson Zai mi me anakok muryo bushi shu inel konjiki shinjo nyosen no shamata gyo nyozobu gyomoku jonyaku shorenge koga chorai midason menzen enjo nyomangatsu iko yunyo senichigatsu shonyo tenku kushira koga chorai minason hannon chodai kanchuju shuju meuso shogon nobuku gedo makelman koga chorai midason mubimuku koshojo shutoku keketsu nyokoku shosariyaku toku jizai koga chorai midason jippo myomon bosashu muryo shomajo sandan isho shujo ganrikiju koga が将来皆尊本体保健知処刑戦言症状明大座お膝上尿線の子が将来皆尊実法将来勝負し権限人図し安楽戦後尊厳上苦行子が将来皆尊小無常無我と薬尿水月伝よろ一種説法無明寺子が将来皆尊非尊不説無悪名薬無女人悪道不主任死心教非尊子が将来皆尊非尊無用法勉強無所主悪知識お上不体死亡大子が将来皆尊仮説依尊功徳寺修善無変如海水小逆前言小乗者衛生主上にしくど virtue be shared equally with all beings. May we together awaken the Bodhi mind and be born in the realm of serenity and joy. Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Amida Butsu.
Good morning, fellow Buddhist member. I'm Jack Dairiki from San Francisco Buddhist Church, one survivor of Hiroshima atomic bomb. I want to first start with my talk with a clap of hand and count of three. 1, 2, 3. With a clap of sound, you might have heard it, you might not have heard it. In Japan, on August 6, 1945, that's when the atomic bomb, the first atomic bomb in the whole world, was exploded. And this was dropped on Hiroshima City. It left the Enola Gay bomber at 20,000 feet up in the air, came down and exploded about 1 mile above Hiroshima City. And this was done in the purpose of have an umbrella effect that would cover a large area. The bomb exploded at 8:16 a.m. But this fateful morning, there was a strange thing happened on that day. There was a air raid at midnight on August 6th, 0001 o'clock in the morning, and it was a short blast of siren, and that it was an imminent attack. Take cover. So everybody got out of bed early in the morning, of course, and when individuals went into their bomb shelter, which created in back of the house, and in some cases in front of the house, as a bomb shelter 3 feet wide but 5 feet long and 5 feet deep. And on top of that would be heavy timber, and the earth from below was stacked on top of the timber. And this become an adequate bomb shelter for regular bomb. Perhaps if it doesn't fall on top of you, you're safe. So that's what everybody hunkered down into. Summer morning, it's cool, but not that chilly. But it turned out to be a false alarm. We had many, many of those throughout the war. As you realize, this is the fourth year of war. It started August 8th, 1941. And this was August 6th, 1945. So it was a false alarm, so I went back home into the bedroom, back into bed. And then at around 7 o'clock in the morning, there was another air raid. By then there was daylight. People started to cook breakfast, to go to work, and so forth. But there was a single bomber that came through Hiroshima. Hiroshima at first, at that time in the morning, was covered with haze, like we have in San Francisco. So they felt that this might not be a good bomb. They couldn't see the target very well. And about to leave, when they saw opening in the distance and drifting toward Hiroshima, so they considered, well, Hiroshima will still be a target. So they cranked the phone on the plane and notified 3 aircraft following 1 hour behind, somewhere in the Pacific, heading toward Hiroshima. So everybody again hovered in the bomb shelter. People who were still in bed came out of the bed. Some were already dressed and ready to go to work or school, and the wives were making breakfast for the morning. So there was a short blast of a siren, and sure enough, there was a single aircraft above, and you could hear the sound of the aircraft. But aircraft just circled around the city and then he left. It turned out to be a bomber that was just a weather reconnaissance aircraft. And once it found out what type of weather Hiroshima would be, he cranked the phone to the aircraft following behind and told them there's a clearance approaching Hiroshima City. So aiming point, AP, was the signal, and Hiroshima became the target. So this aircraft, single aircraft, left Hiroshima City and disappeared. That was the all clear signal. For the citizens of Hiroshima, they thought, well, we were very lucky. This aircraft came and no bomb was dropped. So they again resumed the preparation, go to work or go to school. And streetcars were running, trucks, heavy industry trucks running on the street. There was not many cars in Japan because there was no private citizen owned cars in Japan. So everything was going smooth. And at 8:15 that morning, there was 3 aircraft approached Hiroshima up in the sky. But there was no siren going, no alarm. And that was very, surprising, because Japan was very efficient to warn the people. And the story is, why? Why could this happen? Well, it turned out that they figured by report from the 3 aircraft that carried the bomb, possibly what happened was the 3 aircraft was sighted about 20, 30 miles north of Hiroshima. And that was about 8 o'clock. And they came approaching toward Hiroshima. And when they approached Hiroshima, it was 8:15 when the bomb was dropped. But this was very surprising because I myself, as a student at the time, age 14, and I was 1 year behind in school, so the rest of my classmate was at the time 13. I was 14. And there's a long story behind this. Because when I first went to Japan, approached it, summer of 1941, my father and I boarded the Tatsutamaru, the last ship supposedly left San Francisco port. The reason we were on the boat was in April of this year, we got a letter from Japan saying my grandfather was ill. So my father, being the firstborn, I was the firstborn in the family. I have 4 siblings below me. And my father said, well, this is very important. You should try to meet your grandfather before he might pass away. So we planned a summer vacation trip in August of 1941. So we got a fare on the last ship, apparently, that left San Francisco port. Tatsutamaru was a ship. We got on board. It was supposed to leave at the end of July, but was held back because we were stopped by the government, the agent that came on board to inspect the cargo. And as you remember, there was a war going on in Europe, England and Germany, were at war. But Japan was not at war with the United States at all, nor the rest of the world. And there was a thing called 3 axis, which is Germany, Italy, and Japan, were the 3 axis grouped together to fight against the enemy. And the last enemy was the United States. But August of 1941, the war, United States was still at peace. England requested that the United States join the force with England to fight the Germany. But the United States somehow refused to join the war. So it was peacetime for Japan. For Japan and United States. Although I understand doing some raids on the East Coast, German U-boat was constantly at alarm, sinking some of the ship that in Gulf of Mexico and the east coast of United States. But actually, there's no war was involved, so we were not at tension, very much at ease. So our ship finally start sail in the beginning of August, headed toward Yokohama. We're supposed to stop at Hawaii, but we never stopped because the ship was delayed to start with. So we just passed on Hawaii, went directly to Yokohama. It took about maybe 2 weeks. We were a third-class citizen, the cheapest who get on the ship. We were on the bottom of the ship, the bunk bed about three stack high, and that's where my father and I had a bunk bed. At the beginning, I was very seasick, and I always got seasick. So even on the car, I got car sick. But after a few days, I recovered, and then I was fine. After that, I never got sick somehow. So our trip to Japan, to Yokohama, was flawless. It was very peaceful. We met many people on the ship. And finally reached Yokohama. And when we reached Yokohama, I noticed that everything was a sort of a smaller scale. Train, trucks. If there was an automobile, it was very small. Well, because Japan is just an island. It's about the size of California. So noticing that, and then also that style of living. You know, you take your shoe off when you enter the house. We stayed at the inn of maybe a night or so, and we take your shoe off when you enter the building, and you give a slipper, and you show in the room, sliding shoji, and with a tatami floor. And that's where we slept one night. We took a bath and do whatever we could. It was very warm. This August, the same summer as we have in the United States, very hot. So the next day, my father and I board a train toward Hiroshima. It's an overnight train. It took a day overnight to get to Hiroshima. So I noticed my father taking his shoe off. And Father, you shouldn't take your shoe off in the train. We said, this is Japan, so you could do that. So many people did that too, I noticed. So we got to Hiroshima and greeted by the relative, very surprised to see us. We're American Japanese visiting Japan, and we always would call a gaijin, foreigner. So even though we looked like Japanese, but we dressed differently too. We dressed like American, a foreigner. So we got to my grandfather's house, and good luck having my grandfather recovered, and we were able to see him well. And he was about maybe 50, 60 years old then, and he lived to about age 70. So he was in good shape. We learned that my grandfather in Japan lived in United States for a year or so, but he was in the farm work and was on a horse, and somehow he fell off and injured his leg. So because of the injury, he returned to the United States, to Japan early in stage. But his brother, the brother, number two, stayed in the United States, and he farmed and opened a grocery store, a city called Penryn, in north of Sacramento by 20 miles. He did very well. He became very rich. So a visit to Japan was very pleasant. The clothes I had was American clothes. So my aunt, who was 5 years older than I was, showed me around to Hiroshima City. Took me there, visited her friend and so forth, and we were well treated. And I looked very strange because I had American clothes on. I didn't have Japanese clothes. So, and in the farmland of Hiroshima, a place called Okugaita Mura, there was a river. And the neighbor boys who befriended me wanted me to go swimming with them, and I was able to swim. So I enjoyed the cool water and the Hakatagawa, Hakata River that we swam, and the one part of it was very deep, and we could jump off or dive into it, enjoy ourselves. And it was a very pleasant summer. Surrounding our farmland, the rice were planted, the rice field was flooded for the rice stalk to grow. So this was right after planting the rice, and it was done in June and July. So the stalk was maybe about a foot high by then in August. The harvest would come in October. So rice stalk was growing very rapidly. So my stay in the country of Okugai Tamura, very pleasant. I learned whatever I could, ate all the good food like they served me. And so in September came, my father and I planned to return back to the United States because I was fifth grader in Lincoln Grammar School in Sacramento. So we were anxious to get back. And my father tried to procure a passage on the same ship, Tatsumaru, where I was supposed to return to the United States. We found out there's no ship available. I said, how come? We didn't know. There was no ship available for regular passenger. So my father said, you can't just sit around. You have to go to school. So my father enrolled me in the grammar school, the same village, Okugai Tamura Grammar School. The same grammar school my father went when he was a youngster. So I was a fifth grader when I left the United States. My Japanese language was very poor. So it tested me. They put me in the second grade for a few weeks, but they noticed my math and social study was up to the fifth grader equivalent. So they put me up to third grade the next month. With intensive study at home, my aunt, as I mentioned earlier, 5 years older, and the neighbor school teacher, with the help of them, I was able to get up to fourth grade the next month. So I was a year behind in school, but stayed at fourth grade level. And the summer passed, autumn came, harvest time. In this area, in the farmland, the school is closed for the harvest time, so the student could help. The student who was big enough to work out in the field will help harvest the rice. So we learned how to cut the rice stalk, stack it, and hang it up for a couple of months to turn from yellow-green to dry yellow color. And that was the process. So I had to learn a new technique, something I have never done in my life, work in a Japanese farmland. So everything went well. In the fall, there's a autumn festival that celebrate the harvesting of the rice, and we had a good harvest that year. Then December came, and you know what happened? December 8th, Pearl Harbor was bombed, and Japan entered the war, the Second War. And then, so together with Germany, Italy, and Japan, the three axes worked together to fight against the England, United States, and all the rest of the enemy around them. So that was my schedule in Japan. Then 1946, school progressed from fourth grade to fifth grade, then to sixth grade. In autumn of 1944, I was choose to go to junior high school of your choice. So there's several of them, and you choose the subject that you earn. My feeling was I like to study engineering, so I picked a school called Kure Shiritsu Kogyo, which means Kure is a city, a Kure technical school. And that's where my uncle taught. So my father enrolled me. We had to take a test to enter it. And amazing test is that there's a bank of teacher find a class, empty classroom, and you call your name is called. You open the sliding door, enter, close the sliding door behind you, and you walk to the front of the class. But before you start, you notice a broom on the floor. So you could step over the floor so you wouldn't trip, or either pick it up, pick the broom up, and hang it properly. And then you march forward, and you bow, and wait for the question. And whatever activity you have done before you approach there, you watched, you hang in the broom at one of the tests that was provided. You don't know it. They wouldn't tell you, but that's what they're watching. So they give you an apple and a knife, and you said, peel the apple. So you peel it, and you have to peel it in one strand. And this was done to indicate that you're not a spoiled brat. You could do something on your own at home. And so that's one of the exams. And one of the trick question was, in a record player, on a disc, there's many, many lines. How many lines is there? And you could count each line, but that's a trick question. The record only had one line. It's a spiral, continuous spiral line. So just one line on that record. That's correct. And then you're given a bamboo sword, like using Kendo. And I said, okay, what can you do with just the sword? And we do have some Kendo class at PE in the school. So you take it forward, you bring it forward, and you yell, yeah, and the omen to the forehead, and the teacher look at it, very good spirit, and somehow I passed the test, so I was able to enter with a good grade in my schooling. With passing of this last exam, I entered the Kure Technical School. So I started to commute there in the fall of 1944. At first, I transferred from, I was transporting myself from Hiroshima, Hugaitamura village, to Kure. It was about an hour train ride. And from the train station, you have to hike up another half an hour. So I have to get up really early in the morning to get to the train station and go to Kure. And took about an hour train ride. And from the Kure station, there'll be another hike about half an hour, sort of a gradual uphill to my school. So that's what we have to do. And usually on a run, because you don't want to get late to class. But the thing that happened, now you have to realize this is during the wartime, and we had air raid in the atmosphere. So when the train's traveling with the smoke billowing, the American single plane will come down and strafe our train. So the train will hover in the tunnel to avoid being hit by the strafing plane. And we will wait in the tunnel until the plane passes, and the train will continue. And doing so, of course, the train schedule becomes behind. And we have to run to make up for the lost time, trying to get to school on time at the 8:30 class. It's uphill, as I mentioned, to the school. And we're halfway up the hill. And of course, many other students are in the same situation, same train, and we all get behind schedule. But at the gate, there'll be a teacher who was in uniform. He was an officer in the Army, retired now, but he teach in the school. So he will line us up student who were retarded, line up in 2 rows, and then you face each other and said, slap yourself. So we each slap each other. And this was a punishment for becoming tardy into the school. But it wasn't our fault, but that was the way, that was one of the training. So we got in the classroom and studied after that. And when we have a student who is a little behind in their study, the whole class get blamed. So again, we punish the same way. And what we do is all the students will try to help each other so we progress equally in the same speed. And this will build up a spirit of oneness in your school. And this is 1944. So the war has been going on. And Kure is a very important city, just like we have Candlestick Park, Candlestick in San Francisco. It was a city with the Naval Academy School, as well as a ship factory that would repair ship as well as build ship. So we had constant raiding, bombing raid. And as mentioned, a school was up on a hill. So you could see the bombing of the port below. But as you know, Japan is a very mountainous country. So the ship will be in the canal, like between mountains. And when these bombers come down, release the bomb and try to come up on the other side. After releasing, they find themselves not able to climb up and slam themselves to the opposite mountain. This will occur many, many times, and we used to watch these. But it's also very dangerous because they'd be releasing the bomb as they come diving, and the next day they might hit the school. So we're in the bomb shelter constantly. And this was a war atmosphere. Sometime on the way to school, you'll meet this single aircraft coming, and they will strafe down the street where you're marching, and you have to hide into a ditch to avoid getting hit by machine gun bullets. That was a lifestyle in Japan. War-torn country, war country. Of course, the United States being surrounded by the Pacific and the Atlantic, never had any attack here, not like the British had. So we were very lucky in that respect. But Japan was very constantly bombing raid. And as the war progressed, at the beginning, Japan was doing very well. You know, they conquered part of China, Burma, Malay Peninsula, to Singapore, and Burma, and so forth. So at the beginning, they were doing very well, but as the war progressed, many South Pacific islands lost, and many battleships Japan started to lose. And even the Yamamoto was the admiral of Japan Navy. He was killed. And they say he was killed because the United States Army was able to break down the Japanese message code and was able to read through the message, see what's happening. And they say Admiral Yamamoto was known to be flying in a certain area, and American plane ambushed it and shot him down. And that was toward the end of the war. But at December 1944, we got a announcement that we need manpower for the war sake. So as a student of the 4th grade, 13 and over, you were drafted out of school, worked for the war effort in a factory of any kind to help the war effort. The girl student was the same way. You were 13 and over, you were drafted out of the classroom to work for any kind of work they could do, like telephone operator was one, making parachutes or making uniform was others. So we were drafted out of the classroom to work for the war effort. When this happened, I transferred myself to Hiroshima branch, Kure Municipal School. And that's when I went back to my country home in Kogaitamura, which would be closer to Hiroshima City. So from there, I commuted on the train. And I took the 7:30 train to go to a factory called Toyo Factory. It's the present-day Toyo truck factory. But during the wartime, we used to make rifles and earthling parts at this factory. It was a large factory, probably about 2 miles long. And it was a station one before Hiroshima. And that's where I got off. So when I took the 7:30, about 10 minutes to 8, I'll get off and run to my reporting station. After all, we're still a student working for the war effort. So we had to take roll call. But one assignment was to work on a lathe. And this lathe, my assignment was to carve a high class steel bar. And this became a part of rifle making machinery that we got from Germany, as I mentioned before. But as you know, in April and May of 1945, Germany surrendered. And Japan, being allied to Germany, to get many machinery from Germany. They were very high class machinery, and that's why the machine was made to make rifle was at the Toyo factory. But we couldn't get any more parts, so we had to make our spare parts. And that was sort of my assignment, to carve this bar to make a shaft to use as the replacement part for the rifle making machinery. And we have to be very accurate and turn out the 1 in 100 come out correctly. You carve this right steel bar and check it with micrometer to make it came out right. And that was my job. Now on the August, let's backtrack. During the 4 years of war now, we had many bombing raids in Hiroshima, because Hiroshima is one of the 10th largest city in Japan, Tokyo being number 1. And amazingly, we had many bombing raids, but no bomb was dropped. Maybe a bomb dropped in the country, but no harm was done. And somehow Hiroshima was intact. But city of Kure, as I mentioned, the school I went to, was bombed maybe about a month before with a night attack, with the incendiary attack. As I mentioned, it had the Naval Academy School and also ship industry. It was heavily bombed with the incendiary attack. And they said, city that took 80 years to build is wiped up in 2 hours. That's how intense the bombing was. And as I mentioned, Hiroshima never bombed before, so they felt they'll be the next target. So on the August 5th, 4th and 5th, the announcement went out that needed help for the citizens around the Hiroshima village to come out to Hiroshima to volunteer to break down roads of home for fire breaks. And this was done in the San Francisco earthquake. The roads of home was purposely brought down to make a fire break, so the fire won't continue as it traveled through the city. Now my aunt, as I mentioned earlier, was married about a year by then. She was 19 and good health, physical health. So she volunteered to go to help, and she took the early train, 8 o'clock train. 7 o'clock train. And she got to the city on time, and she was assigned to work on the roof to take the tile off the building that's going to be destroyed, to save the tile for future use. So she was on top of the roof, and this was morning of August 6th. So I told my father, who worked in the city as well, that I was instructed to march into the city from the factory, Toyo Kojo, after reporting to the factory. So I'll be working in the city. So my father acknowledged that. So I got to the train, but as I mentioned, we we got bombing raid on the railroad track, and my train got delayed by 15 minutes. It was hovered in the tunnel, avoiding the air raid, strafing by the aircraft. So I got to my station late by 15 minutes. I ran to my reporting station. After all, we're still a student, so we would take roll calls. So when I got to my recording place, it was a little past 8 o'clock. I took a roll call, about 2 dozen, maybe 3 dozen students. And as we took the roll call, 8:15 rolled by. And then we heard a bomber noise, 3 humming bomber engine above us. So 4 years of war, we're very familiar with the noise, and we know what to do. We looked up in the sky, and there it was, 3 aircraft, 3 bombers, up 20,000 feet, approaching toward us. So we studied the direction they're traveling. It comes directly to you in the path of a bomb. So you have to watch out. So we noticed that the aircraft was turning 5 degrees away from us toward Hiroshima City. So when you were watching this, 8:15 came by, and flash, as a clap of hand. You don't know if you heard the noise or what, but there was a big flash. And when we saw that, we instinctively fell on the ground, put 4 fingers on the eye and a thumb in the ears. And this was done as training during the war. If the bomb nearby you, when it explode, it causes a vacuum around you, and your eardrum and eyeball will pop out. So to protect that, you cover your eyes and ears with this. And there's no way to cover your head because there's no siren going. And we wondered, why are we seeing this aircraft and there's no siren was blasting? But that was a story to be told after. Then we experienced the blast. The blast came right after the explosion. Maybe 2 or 3 seconds later. And then 90% of the window of the factory blew out. The factory had windows because we need daylight to work beside lights in the building. So 90% or 99% of the window blew out. We had it taped in a British cross, but then no help. All the glass blew out and shattered all around us. Any flying debris was flying over us. It's a tremendous blast of a bomb blast. And my body weighed about 100 pounds at that time. I felt like my body floating up in the air. And as we laid there on the ground, we slowly opened our eyes and looked around. Couldn't see anything. Smoke and dust surrounded us. Then I heard a footstep running toward a bomb shelter. And there was, 1,000 yards away, we come to a bomb shelter. It's a tunnel built into a small hill. And that became a bomb shelter for the factory workers. So when I got to the entryway, I looked back into the Hiroshima city, and that's where we saw the familiar mushroom column climbing up from the center of the city, traveling up in the air. And that's 30 seconds after the explosion. So I remembered that, and I painted it in one of my class art. I don't know if you can see it. And this image, an atomic bomb. It's a familiar picture you see. And seeing this, we all hovered inside the bomb shelter. And so about an hour later, we were curious. We came out the entryway to look out to see what's going on. And first thing we saw was a young woman walking by about 50 yards away. And she had her arm extended out. And we noticed that a rag was hanging from the arm. And the hair was burned off. She was almost bald. No hair on the head. And so that's strange. And as we studied closer, we noticed the rag that was hanging from her arm not a rag, but it was her skin. She was burned. And she walked like a ghost, not saying a word, and steadily walked slowly in front of us and went away. And seeing this, we were frightened. We jumped back into the shelter and all started to rumor, what caused this? What happened here? And our imagination flies and said, maybe one of the bomb had a gasoline storage tank to do this kind of damage, a tremendous explosion. And that could be, but that's all we knew. And we have heard not many casualties, but a few casualties who were hit by flying debris. So again, at noon, 12 at noon, we came out to see what's going on. We saw a single aircraft, P-51, was flying. And we seen that, we thought there would be another explosion. So we dashed back. It turned out to be just a reconnaissance aircraft taking photographs of the after effect of the bomb. And then about 3 o'clock, we finally got a notice from the school teacher. He said, if you live away from the city, if you're not injured, if you could walk, you could leave the factory. And that was the first order that we were permitted to leave the factory. So I came out of the factory since I live away from the city. And half of the students lived in the city, about half maybe lived away from the city. So when I went onto the highway, it was just droves of people, injured people of all kinds, limping, walking on their own power. And as I mentioned, or not mentioned earlier, when the atomic bomb exploded at 8:15, 8:16, the center of the bomb, they say, that it exploded a mile above Hiroshima City, was 10 million degrees centigrade. Very, very hot. It was equivalent to the first surface of the sun. At the ground zero, several thousand degrees centigrade. As you realize, 1,500 degrees centigrade will melt a steel bar, but several thousand degrees centigrade at ground zero. Anything that was there will be just burnt irreparably and disappear into smoke. And a 2.5 mile distance, people was burned and killed. They say 80,000 people died instantly when the bomb exploded. Beyond that, clothes burned, and if there was a pattern on your clothes, the dark image of the pattern will be etched on the burned onto your skin. The white area will reflect the heat, and it will be somehow saved, but still burned underneath it. That's how it was. This was a fire explosion bomb. And I turned out that I was about 3.5 miles away from the hypercenter. So I had no burn, no injuries, fortunately. And so when I got on the highway again, I saw a ghost train coming out of Hiroshima Station, traveling my way. So I was able to run and hop on the train from the ground up. When I looked inside, the windows of the train was broken, 90% of it blown out. The chairs, furniture were just scattered all over by the blast of the bomb. And injured people who were traveling away from the city, crying for help, water, anyway, first aid if you can. But I had nothing to give them. So I decided I'll walk home and jumped off the train and walked 10 miles from there to my home in the country, was Ukainara. So when I got home, it was about 6 o'clock at night. I left the factory at 3. And my grandmother was scanning the horizon, and she saw me coming home. I was very happy. Oh, you're home safe. You're okay. And no injury, and so forth. And I first thing questioned, where's my father? So he went looking for you early in the morning. I never saw him. So, but I surveyed the building, the home, and I noticed all the sliding doors of the house on the ground. Nothing was broken. No glass was broken. The ceiling was intact. Usually the ceiling had blown up. But so we were able to put the sliding doors back onto the door slides, and we were able to cook me dinner and have waiting for my father to come home. And we had an early dinner. My father finally came home by 9 p.m. and he told us a story. He first came to the factory after the bombing, probably 9:15, 9:30, and I inquired about my student whereabouts. It was total chaos. People running in a circle, trying to hide. So he had no answer. So he assumed the student marched to the city. So he started to walk toward the bridge to get into the city, but he was in the opposite traffic of the victim escaping the city. The MPs at the bridge stopping, nobody to go into the city, but people coming out, not going in. Then he ran into another relative of his doing the same thing, looking for his younger brother. So they went downstream of the river, waited for the tide to subside. Because this river is related to Pacific Ocean. And there's a tide difference about maybe 6 feet or so. So he was able to wade across when the tide was down. And he walked into the city, started looking for anybody with me who had my name tag on their left side. But mostly the uniforms are burned off, the faces burned off from the blast. So my father just asked questions. Are you Jack? Are you Jack? One after another. And if the person didn't answer, he just assumed it wasn't me. So he walked through the city, and he found that many people have dove into the 100-gallon water tank. As I mentioned, Kura City was incendiary attack. So Hiroshima City prepared himself with a large water tank in front of the house to fight the incendiary bomb attack. But people jumped into the tank to escape from the tremendous fire that's going around and drowned instantly. And the river is just the thousand body drowned in the river. They tried to escape the heat. They just jumped off, whether they could swim or not, to get away from the heat. So as I mentioned earlier, 80,000 people died instantly when the bomb exploded. And this was part of it. So we noticed at home, my aunt was gone early in the morning and she was not returned. So my grandfather and my father, next morning, took a push cart and marched into the city, looking at the temple ground, school ground, and going from, again, one body from another, because the clothes are burned off, the face is burned, the body's burned, asking for my aunt Shizuko. Are you Shizuko? If they don't answer, just kept on going. But at one time, on the third day, they came on somebody, and they asked a question. The person just happened to moan something. And so, oh, you must be it. And her face was burned, her body was half burned, because we learned that she was on the roof, taking roof dialogue. So she was watching the same 3 aircraft I was watching at the Toyo factory. And she received the same blast I was, except she was 1 mile from the hypercenter. I turned out to be 3.5 miles. So somehow, she doesn't know, she was blown off the roof, a tremendous blast, and she was able to run, somehow crouch, run and fall, and came to a safe place where they care for the injured, and turned out to be one of the temple ground. So on the third day, miraculously, she was found. But at the time of the explosion in Hiroshima City, as I mentioned, Hiroshima City was the 10th largest city And there was 55 hospitals. Like you know, in San Francisco, there must be hundreds of hospitals in the city. But there were 55 hospitals in Hiroshima City. Only 3 survived a usable hospital. There were 200 doctors in the city. Only 20 survived to help the injured. There was about 2,000 nurses, and only about 200 survived, or less than 200 survived to help the injured. So you could see the condition the city was in, totally destroyed in a tremendous 70,000 fire breaks occurred. 12 forest fire in the surrounding area going on. And just see, it was just total chaos. But as somebody mentioned, as I saw a picture, for the mushroom cloud, it broke into cumulus cloud, thunder cloud. And it said about 10 o'clock in the morning, it started to rain. Whoever got the rain, it was a black suit they got on the body. And they had to be in the downwind side to receive this rain. But people who had no injury but received the rain. And when they got home after a few days, they became ill. They started to bleed from the gum, nosebleed, and then pretty soon the hair started to fall out, and they died. And they call it radiation sickness because the nuclear bomb was created by uranium, in this case, in the Hiroshima bomb. They say Nagasaki bomb was plutonium bomb. But either way, when the atom is split, it created a radiation, alpha, beta, and gamma. So the radiation becomes like a poison gas. When you attack your body, it breaks down your body. Your red and white corpuscle formulas start to break, and the white corpuscle will fight the infection, start to break down, and there's nothing to protect your body. So atomic bomb, in a way, is a poison bomb. By Geneva Convention, no poison bomb could be used in warfare. And if you know, Professor Oppenheimer, one of the main person who succeeded in creating the atomic bomb. And he went to President Truman's office one day before the bomb was used to plead to Truman, do not use this bomb because it's a poisonous gas bomb. You have a radiation in the bomb when it explodes. And Truman just yelled, "Get this crying baby out of my office." And they expelled Oppenheimer out of the office. But but the scientists tried to warn Truman. But for Truman, he inherited the program of the Manhattan Project from Roosevelt, because Roosevelt passed away. So he didn't know much about it, but all he knew was it's a bomb that took $2 billion at that time when it was created. So he wanted to use it to end the war. But the generals and Admiral Eisenhower and Wilson knew that Japan is trying to surrender, and they have lost the war in June or July. Iwo Jima fell, and that was the last stronghold for Japan. And thousands of casualties of both the United States and Japan. And Iwo Jima finally surrendered, but tremendous casualty. When before the war ended, and Truman was to use the nuclear weapon, Japan was trying to send a message through any means they can. And then the United States knew that there was a message coming through that Japan wanted to surrender, but Truman ignored it. He wanted to use the atomic bomb for some reason. Is for his ego or what? But he said he was warning the Russian because we have the special bomb that not to invade Japan. and he wanted not to use the American force to Japan so we could save 500,000 soldiers from casualty. This might be very true. And also, the cost of making this bomb was about $2 billion at the time, horrendous money. And these factor was in the air. And they negotiated, said all Japan was asking for is the emperor to stay at this throne as a figurehead, like in England. But the Truman didn't want to hear about it, but he wanted to use atomic bomb. And therefore, Hiroshima became the victim of the atomic bomb, first atomic bomb in the world. Now, as you know, we are the 75th year since the atomic bomb was used. And Professor Edward Berg mentioned that we should never use atomic bomb again on any purpose or any being because of the effect that they have around the world. When Hiroshima was Japan surrendered, Hiroshima city was declared not to be resided. No living could live there for 100 years because there's a radiation in the ground. And when Chernobyl accident happened in the 1980s, it was also announced no people could live in Chernobyl for 100 years. And this was just an accident of a nuclear plant, electric plant. But the radiation effect on the surrounding area was tremendous. And when Sendai earthquake in 2011, March 11, happened, also was announced no people to live there for 100 years because of radiation. Few years back, people wanted to bury their loved one in their cemetery, but they were cautioned not to dig any earth because of the contamination of the earth. And I haven't heard any permission to live in Sendai area, although people live there because they have no place else to go. And in Sendai or Chernobyl, the senior folks said, I want to live in my house and die there because I'm going to die there anyway or die in a few years. So reluctantly, they might live there. Of course, the goats and the cattle who live in the area and eat the grass, eat contaminated grass. So the milks and body of the animal were contaminated. It's such a pretty frightful type of condition we have. Nagasaki was the same way. It was a plutonium bomb, and same effect happened there. So as we observe the 75th year again, we are very fortunate that somehow everybody, many countries, a dozen or more countries have the atomic weapon. As you know, North Korea been threatening us to use the atomic bomb, and they have been designing a missile to launch to Washington, D.C., New York City, and Denver, and Alaska, San Francisco, Los Angeles, even Hawaii, 6,000 to maybe 5,000 miles away. They said they are capable of launching this nuclear weapon. And there we stand. But fortunately, nothing has been done or used. We're constantly alert. And now they have a new type of weapon that could be launched from submarine. So it'll be hard to detect. And the speed of the weapon is said 5 times faster than the speed of sound. And you can imagine how fast that will be. But even say Japan and New Zealand, is also researching to gain aircraft that travel that speed. But for them, it was not for weaponry, but for travel purpose. But to create such a nuclear weapon or armament, it costs billions of dollars to create it. And as we understand, in any country, but Russia especially, there are billions of dollars. There's a lot of money for them to try to catch up. And now we have this epidemic, the virus. Now, without the use of the weapon, people are dying by the millions. And it's not one country, but all over the world. People are dying from South America, Spain, Europe, European country, any country that could name, Japan as well, Peru, Canada, Iran, Turkey, and so far the England have a big percentage of dead people, 14%. Spain have 11%. France have 15%. People dying. Italy have, let's see, 16%. So there's a tremendous amount of people dying without the nuclear weapon. And you could see in ourselves that why are we killing ourselves like this? And why can't we live peacefully? We breathe the same air, drink the same water, type of water. And the earth is very fragile sphere. And we have 9 planets that surround the sun. And unit of Earth is number 1. And the moon, gravity, if you study it, is only half, or maybe 30% of Earth. So we have an astronaut landed in the moon. So you send a rocket out into space to return. You only need 1/3 of the power to leave the Earth atmosphere. Mars only half of the gravity of Earth. So you only require 1/2 of the strength to leave the surface of the Mars to return back to Earth. Of course, due to the lack of gravity, the air is equally thin. While the Earth is 1, the Mars is maybe 50% less air, or maybe 30% less air. Moon is about 50% less air. Therefore, you have to have a spacesuit to feed yourself with oxygen to live on this planet. So far, Earth and Mars has been extensively studied, and the other planets are very difficult to reach, and it hasn't been considered for launch or being studied, however. So we live in such a situation. Why nuclear weapon when virus could kill just as equally? We don't need such a thing. We have to work together and keep our Earth clean. So it's very important to us. On the 75th year, we're very fortunate and live peacefully with all the people around the world. And also this applies to animals in the Earth. We have a special planet that we have special type of animals. And we don't know anywhere on the other 9 planets there's the living item live on the planet. So more so, we have to keep our Earth a very peaceful and pleasant place to live. It's very important. And as a Buddhist and any other religion, we have to study, understand, and enjoy each other's love and tranquility, and live in harmony. And with this, got a little long. I'd like to conclude. my talk. And I thank you for this opportunity to speak to all of you and think about this condition we have in the whole world. That we live on one earth, and we all are the same people with head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a body. We're the same. We don't look any different. And just color of the skin might be different. Otherwise, we need the same air and water to survive. With this, I like to say my Japanese Buddhist prayer, Namu Amida Butsu, to all of you, and live peacefully. And thank you very much to listen to my talk. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leo Joslin, Minister's Assistant, and I'm here to offer a reflective reading for this today's service. August 6th is a very important day, and we've just heard from Jack Dairiki, Minister's Assistant, with his powerful eyewitness account of the dropping of the atom bomb on Hiroshima. That took place on August 6th, 75 years ago. Today is August 9th, and today is the 75th anniversary of the dropping of the bomb on Nagasaki. This has significance for me because my mother was a middle school student in Nagasaki, and she was out of town that day. Had she been there, she probably would have died because everyone who lived in the house died that day. I'm very grateful that she wasn't there. I'm grateful that she was able to live a long life. And I'm grateful because that made it possible for me to live a long life, because had she been there, I wouldn't be here now. Nuclear war is an abomination. Nuclear bombs destroy life. But we can be hopeful because there's a far greater energy. At the core of our tradition, there's an energy that's far greater than anything that humanity can create. I'd like to read from The Heart of the Buddha Dharma, written by Kenryo T. Tsuji, former bishop of the BCA, and he describes this energy. The life that pulsates in me is changing every moment. Birth, old age, sickness and death, and birth again to repeat the endless cycle. We call this energy the infinite light and life of the universe. The Buddhist way of life is not to fight the currents and rapids of life, but to move in harmony with the eternal flow of cosmic energy. This is the life of Nembutsu. Shinran said, I place my mind in the soil of Buddha's universal vow and let my thoughts flow into the sea of the inconceivable Dharma. My life energy, which I selfishly call my own, is really a cosmic energy. I do not own it. It belongs to the universe. While it operates in me, I must realize that I must direct it toward compassionate ends. And so my aspirational prayer is that we direct this energy toward compassionate ends in such a way that an atom bomb will never again fall on this planet. Please join me in Kansho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you so much.
So thank you to Jack Dairiki for his remembrances and his appeals that there will be no more Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And also to Leo Joslin's presentation or sharing of his reflections for this special occasion. So for today's announcements, I'd like to, again, as we've done several times, is invite people to check in and join our weekly book club that meets at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays on Zoom. So if you're interested in joining, just call the church or do an email and we'll give you the instructions for that. Likewise, for our Wednesday evening 6:30 mindfulness virtual gatherings, you're welcome to sign up and find out how to connect with that. Some other, I guess, reminders or whatever, that we're continuing our bento project. So you could inquire online or emails or whatever and see about signing up to order and receive the bentos for whatever week that it's being provided. Okay, and some other reminders is, we're still in the midst of the census for 2020. So if you haven't had an occasion to present or submit your census report, please do so, because that helps the government in making plans for services for all of our communities. Okay, and then looking ahead, in a few more months, we're going to be having our national election. And I think you could appreciate how important it is to exercise that privilege, but also see what we can do to redirect, how things have gone on or not happened for these last 4 years in a more positive and responsible way. Okay? And along that, we're trying to encourage everyone to maintain, the safety precautions that the Department of Health have provided us, so that we can do whatever we can to try to avoid and curtail the spread of the COVID-19 virus that has taken a major toll on our global health and also economy. Our livelihoods are at risk, but without our livelihood is secondary. So please be careful, please be safe, take good care. Thank you again for joining us. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
If you had just one wish, what do you think it would be? If it could be life-changing, you thought you'd only dream.
A door once closed now opens. Suddenly you're free to choose your destination. Unlikely as it seems, you'll fly. No boundaries in sight. We'll soar, and with all of our might, we will dance, we will sing, and the world will hear the ring from the bells toll. That's all of our words. You'll be the voice they can't hear. They'll see all our pain and our fears. Let us dance, let us sing. We'll write peace on your wings, and you will fly all over the world. I wish for no more sadness. Every day a holiday.
Friendships never ending. No families forced apart.
Lots of love and laughter.
Illness gone away.
Fun that's everlasting.
No more broken hearts.
You'll fly, no boundaries in sight. We'll soar, and with all of our might, we will dance, we will sing, and the world will hear the ring from the bell toll. That's all of our words.
You'll be the voice they can't hear. They'll see all our pain
that gives us warmth, the soul that brings us home.